My name is Brian King. I'm a former executive vice president at T-Mobile USA, where I was CIO for a number of years.
Pleasure to meet you at long last. So I'm a JJ, that stands for Jean-Jacques, and I fell into the cauldron of digital transformation when I was little. I've done 5 of them. I think first of all, being a CDO, CIO is a absolutely fantastic function and role, to be honest. You have a lot on your shoulders, and the role has evolved quite drastically for the last 25 years. It used to be looking after the operations, if you remember, Brian, and being in charge of incident security and all these type of things, and it's migrated a lot into commercial and business responsibilities. And I can see that in the future, not so distant future, it's already happening now. If you look at Decathlon, the CEO of Decathlon is a lady, Barbara, who was actually the CDO at IKEA before. So those roles emerge, go into business responsibilities, and some of them take leadership seats.
I'd probably add that there's still that operational piece that
Yeah, of
kind of
course.
needs to be taken care of. But, maybe if you look at it in thirds, it's kind of a third operational. It's a third thinking about transformation opportunities, and then a third on a strategic standpoint so that you can fully align what you're doing from a technology standpoint with their goals and aspirations. Yeah, I'm sure you've experienced this too, JJ, but there's always competing priorities within the business. There's a limited amount of resources, and yet the business always wants the IT team or the technology team to go and deliver new things so they can incrementally do that. I think part of the CIO role is really to help educate the business units, but also to collaborate very deeply with them and really fully understand what makes them tick.
I think the days where CIOs were what I would call chief information officer and taking orders are gone. And I think we're
I
in
agree.
agreement on
I
that.
agree. Yeah.
But that aspect of collaboration, as you said, is very important. And apart from our own functions and maybe the CFO functions, there's very few of us who've got this cross-functional view of everything that's happening in the business. And I found that embracing the OKR framework, objective key results, underpinned by some simple KPIs, and really aiming at delivering a very clear North Star is pretty important.
Yeah, I love that very much. I think I've seen it during a QBR, kind of a readout, like you talk about the OKR framework, also having the business partner be the one to read out what's going on
Yeah,
from an IT perspective, because that really shows that level of collaboration and understanding where the trade-offs need to be. Things don't get lost in translation anymore.
exactly.
I think it starts with the business case that you put together, and you, again, back to the collaboration with the business unit, building that combined business case, looking at specific pain points that the business has, and helping become more an evangelist of what you need to do from a technology stack point of view. It's easy to build those business cases when you're collaborating across the business and working through that.
I think for me, what is essential is to really understand all the entries in the general ledgers of the P&L and making sure that we understand where the value is being made. From a growth perspective, from a sales perspective, it's difficult to actually increase sales. And when you actually go and move this organization into becoming far more agile and also far more business-led, you can actually go and have a big impact on the valuation of that business. That needs to be up, huh?
What'd you get?
A dog.
I think for me, things like natural language processing, generative AI, they're great kind of adjunct technologies that I see today. And just there's a lot of hype around Gen AI especially, but I see them as really complementary, looking at how they interwork with, I would say, much more predictable AI and ML solutions that you have today, and then really bringing all that together to potentially relieve that, I would say, the more mundane tasks that are done today, and things that can be done through touchless planning or touchless closed loop solutions and things like that.
To do autonomous planning and touchless forecasting, and then the replenishment is done with very little human intervention, it's a release, to be honest. We can use our power to actually go, and our time that we have, which is so precious, to actually accompany and support the change management, because quite often it is to do with that. And it's the empathy that you need to display to actually drive those big changes and trust the machines.
I think you've hit on something really critical there, which is the change management piece of it, because without the change management, people's identity, people's business identity is related to the data that they work with sometimes, right? So helping them understand that you're saving them time, they can then dig deeper into business challenges versus looking at the same thing they do every month. That's absolutely critically important. And that's where things like Gen AI and AI and machine learning come into play.
Yeah, personal identity to what they do, you summarize it very well. I think my analogies sometimes take me in different places that I expected to, but if you allow me, Brian, indulge me for a second, you cannot play as a child with Legos and Mechanos.
Love Meccano.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to choose, but we have to have that discussion from a technical perspective at the beginning, behind the scenes. Once you are clear about what that is, we need to educate our colleagues on this and focus them on the big use cases. And usually in retail, depending on your history and your competitive landscape, it could be in the customer data, so you need a CDP. You could go into pricing as well. Markdowns that are done in retail are usually done on spreadsheets, but a markdown when you buy, I don't know, cooling units, and you expect the summer to be hot, but it is not hot, and then you have all of these extra cooling units in your warehouses. Do you actually keep them in the warehouse, or actually do you go and mark them down to actually get rid of them? Data in there is pretty important, and you get if you've got 300 to 500 stores and a range of a few thousands units, you will see that you get into numbers of 2 to 3 billion. You cannot do this physically on spreadsheets. You need the computing power, and you need to choose if you want to have your technical foundations on Mechanos or Legos. If you do Legos, for example, then you need to build them. And you build them in data assets, and those data assets like Rubik's cubes, because you can reuse them. Because if you do it well, you can reuse exactly the same thing to actually go and do the pricing on another type of SKU or ranges. You can use the same thing to actually do better planning and forecasting.
Yeah, I mean, again, I love that, JJ, just hearing the way that you speak so passionately about different use cases within the retail business is fantastic. But it all talks about the underlying architecture that's chosen from a technology stack point of view, and how you then leverage that as the foundation for what you want to do with the data and bringing those data silos all under one roof. It's fantastic.
In my experience, to make it last, so that in a family business, so that the children and the children will benefit from this transformation, the business will still be there. Or on the stock market based companies, that the share price is not stuck and being penalized because they still live in the analog world and they don't understand omni-channel, is pretty important. So one of the key things I personally do is that I make sure that the chairman, the key shareholders, the chief executive have an unswerving commitment to this North Star. When they don't have it, it's much better to walk away, because you will deliver a failed transformation. And I think once you have the commitment and you've got that level of resources, then the next bit is to actually shift the organization to this product mindset, which is not simple to do because everybody likes certainty. And so to actually move to a product-centric, where you don't control everything, when you actually empower cross-functional teams, actually they will tell you what to do, and where you become a servant leader to help those teams to actually take the blockages away, it's very different. But the rewards to it are phenomenal.
Yeah, I love use the word empowerment, and I think that's where when those cross-functional teams really work well together and they feel that they're truly empowered to come up with creative solutions for a company, that's the real unlock there, and that's the key. At all layers of the business,
That's
everybody
correct, yes.
understands the journey that they're on, and that really helps with the change management approach too. But yeah, you touched on it. Without that true top-down executive sponsorship and staying power, you could be doomed for failure. Well, thank you, JJ. Just listening to you today, I've learned a lot. I always like to have conversations like these, and thank you so much for spending time with me.
Likewise, Brian, it's been a pleasure. I know you took a couple of planes to come over here, and I look forward to go and have some social time with you tonight as well.
That's awesome. Thanks, JJ. Yeah, wee. The most important skill for CIO, there are many skills that are required. Being a visionary, setting the aspiration, being a servant leader, really helping empower your teams to be successful.
They need to be visionary, they need to show a lot of empathy, and they need to be brave.
I'd like to add bravery. Fastest growing digital trend is around data.
Yeah, be invited to join the board.
Long-term adoption of a product or tech stack, I think, it's back to that continuous improvement approach, making sure you don't have that launch and leave mentality. And so you can continue to build on the success that you've driven so far from the transformation and continue to drive that forward, as you say, JG, for years to come. Transformation.
Positive NPS.
Machine learning. I can be excited if someone says add AI to the tech stack, or I can roll my eyes depending on whether they really know what their use case is. Challenging.
For me, it's customers.
I'd also say exciting.
I have to think about this one, but for me, it's legacy.
Winning.
In Unilever, and I was very young, and I looked after all the breeding programs of vegetables. They had the world's largest breeding programs, which I had no idea of at the time. And it was a fantastic school of management and leadership.
Yeah, my first job I ever had was in construction, and I guess taught me a lot about architecture and the need for great foundations.